The scheduled meeting of the City of New Smyrna Beach Planning and Zoning Board and Land Planning Agency for Monday, June 2nd, 2025 may come to order. Please silence all cell phones. Stephanie, could you please call the roll?
John Causey.
Here.
Thomas Bean.
Here.
John Hall.
Here.
Stephen Yates. Larry Recraft.
Here.
Curtis Hodges. And Kip Holvershorn.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the agenda. City staff, do you have any changes to the agenda?
We do not, thank you.
Thank you. No minutes to approve this month, so we will move right into public participation. In accordance with resolution number 11-89, a 3-minute limitation will be imposed unless otherwise granted by the Planning and Zoning Board. This is the opportunity to address any item not a part of tonight's agenda. So with all the folks that we have here tonight, I'd just like to repeat that again. Now's the time to come forward and speak if you want to speak on anything that has nothing to do with tonight's agenda. So if anybody would like to come forward. Otherwise, if you're here tonight to speak on an agenda item, you will speak at that time when it is brought forward. So I'll give another second for anyone who may like to come forward. Seeing none, public participation is closed. We have no old business, so we'll move right into new business with V-7-25 at 160 North Causeway. This is the public hearing for a variance to allow a larger boathouse and taller boathouse.
Parking for the public recreational boat ramp, boat dock used by the Marine Discovery Center's tour boat. The property owner requested a variance to the city's land development regulation 803.04 to allow a proposed single covered commercial boat slip or boathouse and to allow for an increased height above the mean high water line. So the City Commission approved the purchase of a police department vessel so that the New Smyrna Beach Police Department can patrol, respond to calls, perform search and rescue operations, and assist the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and the state of Florida officers in the Indian River. The city received a $75,000 grant from the Florida Inland Navigational District to purchase the police boat. So as you can see from this slide, I've attached the boat drawn from the boat manufacturer. This slide also has boat specifications from that manufacturer. And then here's the final picture of the boat that was purchased, including 2 officers holding the grant check. So the police department wanted to have a roof over the boat to protect the public public asset. Also, because of the nature of the service of the boat would provide for public safety, the boat would be too large to fit into a 300 square foot covered boathouse. And because of the type of the boat and the law enforcement accessories, the height of the covered boathouse would have to also be increased. Next, I've attached the design plans for the proposed boathouse. Currently, these plans are at a 60% design phase. There also would be minimal mangroves that would have to be trimmed for access to the proposed boathouse. The selected location would be to the west of the parcel, close to the existing New Smyrna Beach utility facility. This location would be far away from the existing public parking and Marine Discovery Center boat tour operation. So the boathouse would cover the boat and the platform that the officers would use for the egress to the boat. A gate and a fence has not been chosen yet, but the designer has shown some of these as examples that they may select. Also, the planning department did a review of the city's comprehensive plan to determine if the request would be compatible with that plan. This proposed dock structure and the variance request would be consistent with Element 8, the intergovernmental coordination of the City of New Smyrna Beach's comprehensive plan, on the serif subparagraph for law enforcement. Also, under the city's land development regulations, section 803.04, paragraph C, subparagraph 2, covered boat houses or slips may not exceed 300 square feet. And also under section 803.04, paragraph D, subparagraph 1, the maximum allowed height of a structure is 15 feet above the mean high water line. Or if somebody had a secondary deck, the maximum allowed height would be measured from the second floor and not the actual required handrails. So the land development regulation under section 803.04, paragraph L, boat dock variances, the following criteria would be used in granting or denying the variance are as follows. The applicant's responses are italicized and the staff's responses are in bold. So criteria number one is special circumstances exist which are particular to the property or the waterway in question, making boat mooring or waterway access difficult. The applicant's response was that the boathouse operation demands, particularly emergency deployment, require rapid and direct access to the water, which is hindered without having a dedicated dock on the water, and also due to the size of the vessel and the safety of the police staff during the deployment of the vessel, the physical and functional limitations necessitate a variance to allow for a dock configuration that would ensure the mooring and rapid response capabilities. So staff's evaluation was that the special circumstances would pertain to the operation of that vessel on the waterway, and if the vessel was only trailered, that would reduce the response times during an emergency. The planning department also would agree with the applicant's assessment, and the planning department has determined that the criteria has been met. Criteria number two, strict application of the requirements set forth in section 803.04 would deprive the property owner of reasonable rights presently enjoyed by other nearby property owners. The applicant's response was that the size and dimensions of the police boathouse supports safe loading and unloading of police staff and equipment, creating a proper space for full functional use of their watercraft access. And the strict adherence to section 803.04 would inhibit the police department's ability to operate and maintain its patrol and rescue vessels effectively by placing undue limitations on public safety operations. And the planning department's evaluation was also that the strict application of the requirements would inhibit the operation of the public safety and response times, and that the planning department would agree on the applicant's assessment, and the planning department has determined that this criteria has been met. Number three, special circumstances and conditions exist that do not result from direct or indirect actions of the present property owner or past property owners. This criteria shall be not satisfied if the present or past property owners have created to any degree the hardship that the subject of the variance requests. The applicant's response that 1 year ago, the New Smyrna Beach Police Department acquired a marine vessel for the use throughout the intercoastal waterway for marine emergency services, search and rescue, and water safety and education. And the boathouse would allow the vessel to be stored and maintained on the water year-round. The planning department's evaluation was that the special circumstances and conditions would be the storage, operation, and response times for any emergency services, and that the limitation of the regulations did not take into account for the possibility of storing a city-owned emergency vessel in the Indian River. The planning department would agree on the applicant's assessment, and the planning department has determined that this criteria has been met. Number four, granting the variance from the requirements of section 803.04 would not cause substantial detriment to the public welfare, safety, navigation, or convenience. The applicant's response is on the contrary. Granting this variance would enhance public safety by enabling the police department to respond more effectively to marine emergencies, criminal activity on the water, waterway accidents, and search and rescue missions. The proposed dock configuration has been designed in accordance with the best engineering and navigational practices, ensuring it would not obstruct navigational channels, pose hazards, or diminish public access to the waterway. The planning department's evaluation was by not having the availability to have the dock facility for the police boat, response times could be lengthened if the boat was only trailered. The planning department would agree on the applicant's assessment, and the planning department has determined that this criteria has been met. Number five, granting a variation from the requirements of section 803.04 would not constitute a grant of special privilege denied to other property owners. The applicant's response is that the request is specific to the unique operation requirements of a public safety agency and the physical constraints of the site. It does not confer with any exclusive benefit beyond what is necessary for the essential public service. The planning department's evaluation was since the type of the vessel is unique and the safe operation of this vessel is unique, this may not be considered as a special privilege denied to other commercial properties. The planning department would agree with the applicant's assessment, and the planning department would determine that this criteria has been met. So after evaluating the merits of the application, the type of operation it would give an overall benefit to the general public, including quicker response times for emergency calls, better presence on the water, protection of the public access, and responses to the criteria from the applicant, the planning department has concluded the application has met all the required criteria. The planning department recommends that the planning and zoning board approve the requested variances, and that's a condensed summary of the overall 21-page illustrated staff report. Subject to any questions the board may have. Also, the applicant is here for any additional questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions of city staff?
Yeah, Bob, I don't have any problem with the essence of this project, but I wonder if this is an opportunity to lock that in as public property. You know, it's so important, I think, to maintain that shoreline for public use. And there have been various proposals for grocery stores and apartments and restaurants and all kinds of other things. Would this be an opportunity to have a perpetual use agreement on that so future city commissions, for example, couldn't sell that to the private sector?
Well, there was a time where the property had been placed up for sale, and that was done by the city commission at that time and the city manager at that time. But I'm not sure if the city commission currently we have looked to want to sell that property. I mean, we've expanded the recreational uses since that time by increasing the boat ramps and more public areas. In fact, we are now, I think we have a capital improvement project that's going to be underway, and the manager's here. He can explain what the future development that cities want to do on that property, but there's going to be more dock facilities and maybe parking facilities in the future that's coming down the pike. So we're expanding the way that we're going to occupy that property, so I doubt that we're looking to probably sell that in the future. And I'm not sure at my level that we can put a restriction on the property.
There is language currently in the charter that would require a supermajority in order to do that anyway, but that would be a question separate. You can certainly ask that of staff in terms of planned projects going forward.
Yeah.
Any other questions of staff?
Yes. Bob, when I saw the aerial, I went out there today, and my only question is, the western part of the property that you're getting ready to put the dock on gets pretty close to the owner to the west. And my question is you're bringing that dock in at a southwesterly direction rather than a straight in off from the south. If the owner to the west should someday do something, are you going to be kind of close? Should the officers be in an emergency mode and jump on that boat and they jack that into gear and we got a heavy wind and we're blown into potentially one day something next door?
Understand that concern. So on where you see where the proposed location of the dock is, that's just a proposed location. It actually may be moved a little bit further to the east or to the southeast. But the little parcel that's next door to the utilities facility that piece is also owned by the city as well.
Yes, sir.
So that's our little piece that's next door to the.
So the dock is protruding out into where you've got deep water. My question is if you draw a line, how much distance for that size boat under wind conditions would you have, or if there was something there? There's nothing there now, but who knows? You know,
Yeah.
And it isn't owned, and it is not owned by the city next door to the west. Do you have enough distance to make that turn? Because they're not going to probably come out and turn off to the west. They're going to the back of that boat is going to head back to the west.
Right.
And I just how much room do we have?
Well, I would probably want to see if you could forward that question to the applicant, which is our capital improvements manager. So we'll bring him up here in a minute. But the part of the mangroves and woods that you see there just to the left, most of that is owned by the city as well. It's a separate piece. It's a very small piece, but we own that as well. So we're not going to be close to someone else's property line. Right now, you do have boats that are, anchored off out there, but they probably won't be there much longer once the dock gets constructed. So they'll have to find somewhere else to mooring off.
I got you. Yeah.
And if you don't mind verifying, even though it's a city boat dock, still has to follow DEP procedures as far as setbacks and all of that good stuff, right?
Right. So for the city regulation, we require a 10-foot setback off of repairing lines for any dock structures. For DEP, they require 25 foot, but they will allow us close to 10 since we have a local regulation of 10 feet.
So how far are you now?
It's over 10 feet because we own the whole parcel next to it. We're the owners of all of it.
So when that boat comes out, there'll be 10 foot between the property that the city has and the riparian rights to the neighbor to the west?
We're not even close to our neighbor to the west.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah, we're probably 100 feet away from the neighbor to the west, at least 75, because we owned a separate parcel next to us. It's just not combined under one. We have a few parcels here that we own, including where the boat ramp is a different parcel than where this is and where the parking lot is. They're all different parcels of land, but they're all owned by the city. So,
Any other questions of staff?
Are there any other oversized boathouses in that vicinity?
we do not have any other commercial boathouses that are above 300 square feet in the city. Residential can be up to 360 for a single and up to 600 for a double boat slip, but for commercial, it's limited at 300. But most of your commercial slips that you see are going to be open slips. They're not going to be covered. So it's the cover that restricts the size.
Any other questions?
A question for Grant. The idea of this is great. It's a great safety aspect and to do so. But are we establishing anything, any precedents?
There's never any precedence with a variance, if that helps. And I'd
He's
imagine
correct
legal
in his
could-
comment. It will not establish any precedents.
So the entire question then is, are these 5 conditions met in the absolute sense of the conditions and not based solely upon the use of this boathouse?
So as part of the quasi-judicial hearing, that's for you to determine. So based on the evidence that you hear tonight and what you determine to be competent, substantial evidence, you will vote that.
Thank you.
Any other questions of city staff? Okay, seeing none,
I'd like to bring Mr. Kobe up so he might be able to answer any questions you might have as well.
we'll go ahead and bring up the applicant, which is also a member of the city, correct? Okay. If you don't mind stating your name and position for us.
Yeah, Jesse Kobe, Director of Capital Improvements for the City of New Smyrna Beach.
Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add prior to any questions we may have?
Sure, to John's question he had a moment ago about the parcel to the east, which is, as Robert said, owned by the city as well. Just taking that into consideration, we've already moved the dock further east instead of west. So that way we're not going to encroach on our own property in case in the future we decide to do something different with that particular parcel. So we have moved it further to the east and slightly turned it in so that there's a better radius for turning.
So that's not correct?
We have an updated drawing since this one was submitted.
Thank you.
Correct.
That's perfect.
Yep.
The variance request is going to be based upon the size of the dock, not necessarily location, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The only other thing I would add is the question, kind of to your question, but which was more of a legal question. The intent is to have the parts on the side where they would actually, the officers would step out onto the dock where you would normally walk. On most docks, that's outside of the covered roof for this purpose, so that whether it's raining, there's different weather conditions outside, the police are constantly under a covered roof area. So that's the reason the square footage is larger than most normal docks. That's it.
Any other questions of staff?
Thanks, Scoop.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up to public participation. A 3-minute limitation will be imposed unless otherwise granted by the board. If anybody would like to come forward and speak on this item, the floor is yours. If you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, and we'll start your time.
Matthew Dowse with Mark Dowse and Associates, actually representing the client next door, which is North Causeway Marine. And just to shed light on John's conversation, I know the variance is just based on the size limitation. It's not actually set in the stone for the site plan. But the separation, you guys do own the property to the west, but there is a riparian line. So I think the emphasis from the landowner was to state that, hey, if they do have a site plan, give some precedence to where the riparian line is. So when they back up, they're not technically crossing over a riparian line. They potentially could have docks in the future. It just for planning purposes. But we're not opposing a sheriff's dock, and we like the concept of it and the size. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, public participation is closed. City staff, anything further? Okay. Seeing as that, discussion and/or questions by the board. Any further discussion? Okay. So just from my angle, if it helps at all, I am former law enforcement, also did waterway enforcement. And as a part of that, I agree, it is very important to make sure you have your boat on the water so you can deploy rapidly. So I get that. It meets all staff's criteria when they go through the variance process. You don't get that too often where every single one of them meets more solidly. So I can appreciate staff's work on this. If there's no other discussion or questions, do I have a motion to approve the requested variance?
I move to approve variance B-7-25 to allow for a larger and taller commercial covered boathouse for the property located at 160 North Causeway.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it. I third it.
You good with that, Stephanie? Okay, Stephanie, please call the roll vote.
Member Causey?
Yes.
Member Holvershorn?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Bean?
Yes.
And Chair Wheatcraft.
Yes.
On the motion to approve V-7-25, 160 North Causeway as submitted, the vote is 5 in favor, 0 opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Ahead of myself.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is PUD-2-22, New Smyrna Beach Medical Center. Review and give a recommendation to the City Commission on a proposed new master development agreement and conceptual plan for property located on Wild Orange Drive. City staff, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So do I go to?
Yep, downstairs, Kevin.
Thank you. This is a request for a PUD rezoning, but it's actually on a piece of property that has been zoned PUD for at least 20 years and maybe back further. It's a 3.3 acre undeveloped property on the south side of 44, between Wild Orange Drive to the east and and Wildwood to the west. It doesn't have any frontage on Wildwood. It does on 44 and on Wild Orange. Both of those roads that come off of 44, Wildwood and Wild Orange, are county maintained and go through county permitting. So, and DOT, of course, controls 44. So any access there would be permitted and controlled through DOT. There is, as I said, there was an existing PUD MDA in place that was about 2010 that was established, and it expired in 2020. There actually was a site plan approved to follow that, but all of that has since expired. That previous use was for a medical office facility, and this same use is proposed on the same property, pretty much using the same plan. The most significant difference here is where that plan had two buildings. This is just consolidated into one larger building. And actually, while there is no vesting or precedent from the previous expired plan, that was at 2,400 or 24,000 square feet, and this is a total of 20,000 square feet and less parking area. There's different considerations also since that was approved. This is in the corridor overlay zone, and those regulations have changed since that original MDA approval that's expired. The corridor overlay zone is a much more significant landscape buffer. It's 50 feet behind the 25-foot utility easement. So it's a total setback and landscape area of 75 feet of frontage from DOT right-of-way 144. That sets the buildings back further than they previously were, and sets it so that the other facilities have to find another alignment. In this case, this building alignment is more north-south than it was east-west previously. Again, and one other connection point that's new here is a connection to Wild Orange as a driveway connection, because that was not previously contemplated and shown in the plans. One other consideration here is there's historic trees within the site. There are 9 of those, and 3 of those are proposed to be removed by this plan. That has gone through a process. The original application has gone, goes back to 2022. They've been to the City Commission, went to a meeting in February to try to settle that issue of tree removal prior to coming here and going through the process for rezoning. And ultimately, the Commission just had alternatives in discussion, had no real resolution on tree removal, and asked them for that to be settled when the actual PUD goes to the City Commission for their review and approval. So that means the historic tree issue is kind of a unknown at this point. It's just a factor that, to make you aware of. Tree removals don't come to this board, just go straight to the City Commission. So they will be doing that when they meet with them next month or whenever it is scheduled. So that's a factor somewhat, but it's not anything that has been decided, and that was based on the City Commission's own decision when they were trying to pin it down. So again, there's 6 of those trees that are remaining. The other aspect of that is that for tree preservation and to reduce the amount of impervious, they're proposing 9-foot wide parking spaces instead of the standard 10 feet. We allow 9 feet in all the special parking districts and typically would prefer 10 feet, but we also have provision for a reduction in parking spaces due to tree preservation. And in this case, it would just be a reduction in parking space width and due to the tree preservation that they're proposing. The site's heavily wooded, especially towards the south. It also has 2 different future land use designations, one of which is a low-density residential for the 2 parcels to the south. Those are not proposed to be developed in any commercial way. Right now they have 4 parking spaces proposed at the very northern edge of that. The 4 spaces would extend from the driveway that's just north of that, and for a dry stormwater pond. There's also an existing ditch that goes through the southernmost parcel that they're not proposing to alter in any way, and that would just be preserved, actually under a conservation easement, which is proposed.
Jeff, you can control the slide presentation if you'd like to go to the site plan. Hit the space bar.
The what button? I'm sorry.
The space bar on the...
Oh, space bar? Okay.
There you
Okay.
go. Sorry.
It might be beneficial to move directly to the site plan as you're talking
Okay.
about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
So there's some of the existing zoning. They don't have to rezone it. That's the what I just talked about with the difference in the comp plan, future land use designations. We had a similar situation you can see on this map directly to the west where ABC sits. There's the site plan. They're actually proposing 64% of it in open space, and some of that is imposed on them just by the fact that they Can't really propose anything developed impervious within the front 75 feet of that frontage. Actually, the building percentage, coverage percentage that's proposed in the MDA is 15%, which is pretty minimal for a commercial property fronting 44. And that's, again, why the open space percentage, our minimum requirement is 50%, and they have it figured at 64% here. So there's a lot of area for existing trees to be retained, and actually the COZ buffer requirements for that frontage on 44 require a certain, like, pretty much like 12 trees for every 100 linear feet. So that will be extensively added to, along with the large trees that are being proposed to remain. It's a 2-story building that's proposed, and again, it's a total of about 20,000 square feet. So our recommendation, I guess one other point that's often asked is the expiration for this MDA, which has a 5-year period, so they're obligated to complete construction within the first 5 years if it's approved. And with that, we're recommending approval, but that is contingent on the companion application going to the City Commission for the historic tree removal. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions of city staff?
Is that a standard amount of parking? It seems to me for a health center like that. I mean, 80 parking places seems like.
Seems like a lot, or?
Yeah, it seems like, is that our standard on?
Yeah, our standard is 4 per 1,000 square feet for medical offices. And, you know, you go to the doctor and you're typically seeing 5 to 8, 10 people in the waiting room, and they kind of stack them up and maximize it. So, and in this case, it's not in an area where there'd be much space available for overflow parking. So they do want to make sure they have enough for their patients.
I have a question, that more appropriate to the applicant, but I'll ask you first.
Okay.
Flooding in the area. I've been told that that area is prone to flooding, and I was wondering if during the site work, would the applicant be amenable to maybe go above and beyond what's required?
Well, yeah, you will have to ask them that. I know there's situations there. This is starting to go down towards Turnbull Creek to the east. Some of the properties further east of here do get low and wet. And the way these 2 streets come off of 44, they're pretty much downhill, with 44 being the highest grade and going down from there. So they have definitely considered that, and I'll let them respond to your specifics on that.
If you don't mind, can I piggyback off your question prior to, I usually wait for everybody else to go and then I ask, but on the flooding side, I did send an email, didn't quite see the response on this particular question, but I want to ask now, and then the applicant has a chance to kind of think about it. Would city staff support the idea of potentially removing the 4 parking spaces that is in that residential area, or the residential future land use, and extending the size of the stormwater pond? So that way they can not just hit minimum capacity required by St. John's, but rather exceed it slightly to at least help with their own water shedding issues from their own property, as well as maybe help out their neighbors. I'm thinking that might be a goodwill thing, but it would require reduction parking. And would city staff support the idea of reducing parking a little bit for the idea of increasing the stormwater capacity on that particular property?
Yeah, it would seem like, as long as they're amenable to it. When you're talking about the difference between 76 and 80 spaces, it may not be that significant at that.
And I'm just thinking with the flooding issues that we have in that particular area, I personally live in all of our states. I live a few streets over from this address. I know the flooding issues that we see
Right.
the last several years from these hurricanes. So that's why I'm like, I'm not as worried about the parking. I understand we already reduced the size for the tree preservation side of it from 10 to 9 feet, but I'm okay taking out a few additional parking spots for the idea of increasing the stormwater capacity. So it may be more financially advantageous for the applicant as well to do that. But I wanted to throw that out there now, see if staff was supportive, and give them a chance to kind of think about it prior to them coming up.
Okay.
So-
They may actually have plans to do some exfiltration there too, that it's not shown on the plan since it's conceptual, but that would add to the capacity they have.
Thank you.
Piggybacking upon that, I would like to add that if a consideration is made to reduce the amount of parking spaces, even by one, that the planning department look at alternate layouts for parking on the site to get back what they need, and also other engineering methods to achieve better stormwater performance, underground storage, various things of that nature, so that we're not just giving up parking spaces without some trade-off that's completely engineered and thought through.
Yeah, at this point, it really hasn't gone through that kind of detailed civil engineering. They've considered it on a conceptual level, I'm sure, but until they get this kind of approval, they're not going to get into the real specifics of,
Well, the reason I bring up the stormwater side now is because we could get more specific with the development agreement as far as increasing that minimum capacity standard. So that's why I wanted to double check first, because at least we could potentially lock this into the agreement if the developer is amendable.
okay.
And I understand it's part of the site design criteria further down the road, but currently the language of the agreement says we'll meet St. John's requirements. So what I'm looking at is changing that language to we'll do better than St. John's, and I'd just like to better define what that looks like. And
Right.
granted, it could go further down the road with City Commission as they take a look at it. Tonight, all we're doing is making a recommendation, we're not approving. That's the City Commission's responsibility and role. So I just wanted to identify whether or not you guys were good with that, and so, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we, for the record, we did send your comment this morning on to them, so
Okay.
it's not the first time they've had all day to contemplate it, I guess.
Sounds good. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah.
Do we allow compact parking stalls? Do we allow it in the city, the 8-foot? As far
We
as
don't have that in our regulations.
I didn't know.
So, and it seems like the days of that is kind of reversed, where we're seeing vehicles be more and more, and even though our spaces are 10 by 20, sometimes some of those vehicles don't fit in that, so.
It looked like you had
Yeah,
another question.
and this comment is not based on our decision, it's not an evidence-based kind of a thing, but just sort of a citizen observation, I guess. To me, the rendering we have is a very uninspiring looking building as our gateway into the community. I mean, it's just a box sitting there. And also, they're calling it a wellness center. You know, couldn't they do some things with, say, fitness stations, some little trails, maybe some little sitting nooks out there that connote wellness? I mean, they call it a wellness center, but I don't see anything that interprets that to me. Just an observation as a citizen in terms of design quality.
Okay, well, they can change the architecture to whatever suggestions they get, and I'll let them respond to that.
Maybe good for the applicant to bring that up, or you bring that back up to the applicant, if you will. Any other questions?
One further one, the side street, it's West Orange, is that the name of it?
The one to the east is Wild Orange.
Wild Orange. I read, I think in his backup, that's a county road.
Yes,
Does the applicant still have different permitting things he has to do with the county to access off that road?
yes, and I believe they've been in contact with the county, discussed that with them.
Okay.
Any other questions? I would like to verify a few things with you, just for everyone's sake to fully understand. So the property is currently zoned PUD. A PUD requires a development agreement for some type of entitlements to the property.
Right.
A portion of it is a commercial future land use for State Road 44.
Right.
That in and of itself, we can't rezone it to something else other than a PUD. It requires it to be a PUD agreement for this property, correct?
Yes, that
Okay.
the commercial State Road 44 corridor future land use designation specifically says it requires to be developed under a PUD. So if you wanted to not have a PUD on there, if it was rezoned to anything else, the future land use designation would have to change accordingly, or the text or whatever. So
Okay.
that's pretty standard, that future land use requirement along everything along 44. So,
It's compatible with the area, meets the comprehensive plan.
right.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear, so if anybody happens to think that, oh, we can just make this magically go away and it's no longer a PUD, that takes a future land use change from the city commission as well.
Right.
And the applicant would also have to be agreeable, something like that.
Right. There was some point in the past, maybe around 2000 or so, where the city actually extended PUD zoning along anything in the city that was fronting 44. And a lot of that still, it was zoned PUD, but with nothing else besides that. It was just kind of a shell PUD, no development agreement. That's actually the case with the property to the east, on the east side of Wild Orange. That frontage is all zoned PUD, but there's no active development agreement there, and never has been, so.
Okay. And the last question I have for you was in the email as well. As far as the setbacks and landscape buffers between the physical building and the residential homes that are directly to the west,
Right.
is that a standard landscape buffer that you would see as if it was a straight commercial to residential uses?
Well, 20 feet width is the minimum that's stated in the LDR for all PUD for perimeter buffering.
Okay.
And that's, again, just the minimum. It could be augmented either by, fence structure or more width or more plantings. So,
Okay, I appreciate it. I just wanted to verify that they have met the straight zoning, if you will, requirements.
Yes.
Well, in this case, it actually requires it per the PUD, so, or
Right.
the PUD within the land development code.
yeah, the PUD doesn't have many specifics in it because it kind of leaves it up to each agreement, but that is one for this area, is the minimum 20-foot width
Okay.
on perimeters. So.
Thank you.
So I would think the homeowners that are living to the west of it would want as much buffering as possible so that they ideally may not even be able to see the building.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we've had, I guess jurisdictional issues there because a lot of the houses that front or our neighbors are in the county, so it may not be under the same regulations for compatible buffering, so.
Any other questions to city staff? Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay.
Okay, is the applicant here, and would you like to come forward? If you don't mind stating your name and address for the record?
Am I able to manage here or you manage?
I'm going to manage it.
Okay, got it.
I don't trust you guys anymore.
Good evening, Joey Posies, 420 South Nova, attorney for the applicant. And I appreciate all the time Jeff has put into this. Like you said, it's been 2 years we've been working on this, and a lot of revisions, a lot of working through a lot of the nuts and bolts. I think we've got good answers for a lot of what we heard here. It may take a little bit to get there, but we can we'll just go through it. So Jeff had pointed out, it's a little bit of an irregular shaped parcel, partly because of the requirements now. You have a lot of frontage on 44, but then it jogs in depth a substantial way. And like we said, it's existing PUD. And I do want to point out a nuance with New Smyrna that isn't the case in most other jurisdictions. A PUD classification in most other places is just a negotiated agreement. It's an augmentation of how you get there with the underlying zoning and all the details that come with it. In New Smyrna, it's actually a classification that has specific standards. It has a lot of function like a straight zoning. So when you're talking minimum standards, allowable uses, it speaks to permitted uses, it speaks to allowable rights just by the nature of its classification, although it does require an agreement. I just want to make sure that's clear that, when we're talking about this zoning category, it has minimum standards in itself and allowable uses by right that are outlined within the code itself. And the same is true of the future land use. Again, this requires a PD. We're required to go through this process. I had an existing development agreement with an existing development plan that had an existing development footprint that was allowed to come build and had a site plan approval. I can't speak to the wisdom of why they didn't, but they were as close to pulling building permits as you probably could get. The next slide. And most of the property is zoned State Road 44 corridor plan unit development. And if you look at the comp plan, the stated intent is high quality business activity, office, financial institutions, housing of a density of 18 units per acre. So that is the stated entitlement when you look at the future land use. And it allows highway commercial related uses, and its intent is clear as to what's the allowable box you're talking about with what you by right have to do there. And I think it doesn't take much of a jump to say that this is obviously consistent with the future land use, because it's a very close in terms of its use. It lessens the impact, but the nature of it is the same nature that was previously approved when it comes to medical office. Next one. One back. You skipped one. That's okay. Oh, you skipped another. It's the next one. Yeah, perfect. So, like we said, it's currently zoned PUD, and when you go to the PUD zoning, there's a lot of other uses that are allowed by right. You have hospitals, multifamily complexes, restaurants, even including drive-through, theaters, schools. These are all allowed as permitted uses by right, and many of these uses were actually included in the original MDA. So, regardless of the nature of the two buildings, they could have been converted to a hospital. You could have done theaters, restaurants, or the like. And the maximum density of 11 or 18 units would be allowable by right based on both the previous MDA and the PUD zoning. Next one. The difference, I guess, that Jeff was alluding to is that today we have obviously different standards with the COZ coming into effect, and that really that changes a lot of the nature of how you can develop this property. That setback of 75 feet, if that PUD would have moved forward, that concept plan that was originally entitled moved forward, that first building can't be built. It just doesn't fit. You'd have to get a variance, or it'd have to be reworked completely, and that really takes the corridor of 44 off the table when it comes to how you can lay out your buildings. The landscape buffers, like Jeff indicated, you have a 20-foot wide, which is called out in the PUD zoning. The utility easements called out, tree preservation, open space, and everything that's laid out on our plan exceeds that. There are a number of PUDs. I think even if I recall correctly, the one that's two stores down, the pool, I think had 7 variances, if I remember correctly. So this one's not asking for that. Next one. This was originally Coronado Office Park, and like I said, it included motel, restaurant class A, theaters, multifamily. It included the 2 buildings that were 24,000 square feet in total, which, if you do the math on the impervious layout, is about 47% of the site was impervious, and it had a parking requirement of 96 parking stalls. I'll get to it in a minute, but our impervious coverage is actually 10% less than that. We're actually shrinking, and we're shrinking it by trying to do the things that we've been encouraged to do, which is how do we capture less impervious? Well, we go down to the minimum parking we're allowed to, which is 80. We try to shrink some stalls the best way we can, and even shrink buildings that we lose, essentially 4,000 square feet just to create a smaller footprint of impact than was already otherwise approved by the previous site plan and conceptual plan with the PD that was originally adopted 15 years ago. Next one. And really trying to encourage good business. I'll touch on this a little bit later, but the new owner is actually a local doctor, and he's trying to relocate his practice. And this is the reason why this spot is enticing, because it's a place that allows him to offer more services, to offer those constraints, or that work through those constraints that he's currently dealing with when it comes to patient times and trying to get folks in. Again, the PD is, I think, just, you can see his intention is it's very limited as to medical office and uses that are associated with medical office. There's no other use that's outlined in our proposed PD. There's no residential component. There's no intense commercial component. It is what it is. It's a medical office and the like, and that's what it will remain until somebody decides otherwise down the line and has to come back and see you guys. Next one. Like we mentioned, that 75 feet really just takes the front completely off the table in terms of laying a building out. You can't. It just doesn't feasibly work to comply with all the requirements. And the only improvements that we're showing are just the limited access plus the monument sign out in the buffer area along the frontage. That's simply the only improvements, even though others are allowed. The old plan showed parking improvements, other impervious improvements that were within even the buffer area. So we've taken those off the table too. Next one. This preserves far more space than the minimum. This is 64%. It's preservation of the wetland, like was called out by the staff report. Again, there's a substantial reduction in the building footprint, and there's an overall reduction in impervious coverage by over 10%. It's 11% more or less, which is, that's huge. That's a huge percentage of the property that isn't being impacted or can stay in a state that functions in a more natural way. And as Jeff had indicated, the 6 historic trees, and partly just to touch on this, the nature of how we impact the site is a little bit of where we can put the building. When you shift the building in one direction or another, it creates a new issue. And those trees are spread out in such a way where this shape is really dictating where it has to go. Because you shift it to the north, you just impact other historic trees because there's 9 of them on site. And it just creates more impact. So, part of what we were working through, and again, I'll touch on that in a little bit, is, that was part of the time and the patience that we did to take through this process, that getting feedback from staff, going to commission, engaging folks early to say, how do we design this site in a way that keeps impacts as low as possible, given the history we've heard with the neighbors and the flooding, the way that, folks in their perception of growth, how do we manage that? How do we be a good neighbor too? Next one. So, like I said, it's a very challenging site given the new requirements. The building accessibility and access route, the way it laid out previously, it would probably the fire chief would have had a nightmare trying to navigate how you get to those parking areas. This is much more, emergency services friendly and makes it very easy for fire to traverse the site. There's heightened stormwater requirements now too. I believe you guys even heard them a few months ago that we are subject to. It does not change for us the heightened requirements that this design of this site has to reach. The wetland preservation, the frontage buffer, and again, the arborist report already had shown that there's 2 of those 3 that we're asking for are not because they're the healthiest trees. Those are trees that the way we can design around it is, they are compromised in some way, although they can survive. That, well, if we're going to lay it out, let's lay it out with the least impact and try to recapture that vegetation in another way, which is why the landscaping along the frontage was something that we were trying to focus on moving forward, and that's a huge added bonus to this versus the old plan is that screening that you'll get along 44, but also keeping the project feasible. Next one. I mentioned the minimum parking. We're at as low as possible, is 80. That's just a function of code. The old plan showed 99 being provided for. So, again, it's a net positive in terms of impacts. With better fire access with the double loaded parking, just on the site design itself. It's much more efficient and it makes it easier for emergency services to get in and out. And we've met with staff multiple times to review countless proposed options for this site that would result in the least impact, which is how we got here today with the recommendation that staff has made on the plan that you see. Next one. And this is the landscape plan to give you a sense of how densely vegetated it'll be covered. I do want to point out that the building itself is only 35 feet. It's 2 stories, 35, which is essentially a 2-story home. You know, I can understand, you know, the look and the shape of it may evolve as it moves forward, but, you know, in terms of its imposing impact, it's no closer than another residential home would be, and it's also no larger than a residential home could be. And that's excluding the vegetation that will be in front of it. And again, if screening, a fence, you know, vinyl fencing or something is would assist in that, you know, I imagine we have no problem on our end with that too. It's you know, I don't think the elevation did it a little bit of a disservice, because the MDA calls out its height. Next one. And that's what brought us to commission. You know, things that were brought up at commission, and I think that I remember the hearing a little differently, where I think the offer came from us to go through this process to try to get a fleshed out PD, get some feedback so we can bring it back to commission. You know, because that going through this process is important, and trying to find the best plan you can. You know, things that we talked about were parking, how to minimize impacts, which we're down to the least amount of parking possible. Public transit service, again, we're not opposed to that. That's perfectly fine too. We're happy to do it. We reviewed the ingress and egress options as shifting to site, and the way we laid it out is the best we could do for emergency vehicles, and also to minimize just the congestion that would be in and out of the site. And we were also committed to relocating the beehive. That was a comment that was made too. So I at least want that on the record to the lady that spoke to it at the commission meeting in February, that she is being listened to. Next slide. And honestly, my impression is a lot of this was consensus building. A lot of this was, you know, trying to flesh out how to find a project that you know, can minimize the impacts, but also try to make reasonable use of the property to comply with, you know, the quasi-judicial nature of rezoning and the adoption of the PD plan consistent with what was already adopted, and to design a site that is now having to work around a lot of substantial requirements that weren't in place 15 years ago for right reasons. And the only request for this site is the minimum shrinking of the site, or the stalls. Again, it's an impervious coverage. That makes sense from us if stormwater is a concern, or impervious coverage is a concern based on the neighbors and you know, the impact in the area. But we have no problem with that, and that's partly why you see the 9-foot, and it keeps our development impacts tight. Again, if you try to reconfigure the site, we were at it for countless hours trying to reconfigure in a way that recaptured these trees, that in ways to try to work around them, and it's just tough. It's the way the requirements read now, the way you have to design it. There isn't many options, and you know, that's what the process that you see today. That's why we're here 2 years later with something that you know, actually tries to accommodate all those concerns and take them in together. Next one. Again, first floor medical parking was also, it's a medical facility, so that'd be very difficult to do parking on the first floor in a medical facility. Your tree wells, we even looked at tree wells, you know, the proximity of the trees and how the improvements would interrelate with them. The arborist did not recommend them. And it would really just impact the trees if you tried to do it. And the better way to do it would be recapture that vegetation and try to place it in other strategic areas, and create better separation between the historic trees. And that makes for a much better layout and a much more functional layout for the trees to grow and thrive. The new landscape plan, as you know, that was something that was not available to the commission, shows a very densely vegetated buffer that and that is it's a huge added bonus of what the COZ requirements of, but it cuts both ways. It limits your development footprint. Next slide. And as a result of that, we met with staff again after the meeting, and you know, really tried to brainstorm, and this is the plan we came up with. This is the plan that takes into account all of those impacts. We've been under review for 2 years and trying to figure out alternatives. This, in all respects, is less than the otherwise approved MDA that was on the property, And it's really trying to be sensitive to the folks that I think are most impacted to this, given that, I mean, for roughly 10 years, they were next to a site that could be permitted and built. And, that's the reality of this. And, again, we're trying to be sensitive, and, some of the comments we heard in terms of the stormwater, design and how to accommodate and trying to be good neighbors. I'm going to let the engineer speak to that once we get to it, but, again, we're listening and trying to be respectful of the neighbors, and, like you said, this isn't an if, it's how you can't, something has to go here, and something is entitled to go here. Something was entitled to go here and pull building permits for a good 10 years. Nobody acted on it, and here we are, with the same development rights and the same considerations moving forward to try to find something that is a huge need, and that speaks to the next slide. The owner of this site is a local doctor, and he's a family practitioner. He does rehab and health counseling, and he's in the audience, and I'd love for you guys to hear from him too if you'd like. He's owned and operated a local clinic for 10 years in New Smyrna, and the biggest complaints that he talks to are just the need. It's a growing need. For him, it's 6 months to a year to get a primary care physician, which is outrageous. And there just isn't enough of good medical office to go around to serve all of the need in the community. The sites he's looked at, it's either one of two things. It's, the adequate space or the location. There's no site that fits his need. And that's partly why he took it upon himself to try to find a piece of property that can stay local, stay in the area, and not result in a shift of services, which would be the result of folks having to go outside of New Smyrna to find their care, and again, that results in its own set of impacts. That's something that I don't want to get lost in the narrative here, and trying to be respectful to the neighbors, that the reason for this is this is somebody who wants to stay local. It's not just an unknown doctor, it's not just an unknown medical facility operator. It's somebody who wants to be local and wants to stay local, and this is an opportunity to do that too. So the next slide. So just to conclude, the plan as proposed, it meets or exceeds all requirements. It's an improvement. It's a huge improvement on the original design. It incorporates the heightened standards. It's a strange site just because of the requirements by implication have taken a huge piece of the property off the table, essentially, for building footprint. And we appreciate staff's recommendation, given how much time and effort went into this. So I think what I'm going to do, though, is if maybe we'll turn it over to the engineer real quick to speak to maybe some of the more particular concerns with the engineering on the stormwater side, and then open it up for questions. We're happy to have that dialogue and try to work through concerns that we hear. So with that, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Matthew Dowse with Mark Dawson Associates. We know stormwater comes up every project. On a site like this, our hands are kind of tied based on the configuration of the site. We have looked into alternatives to provide more stormwater. We're obviously going to meet St. John's River Water Management standards, your new standards, which are more strict than St. John's. We have no issues meeting that. We're required to meet those. But you did bring up a couple points about maybe removing those 4 parking spaces. We do need all the parking. Could we expand that into that area? That is a possibility. But I also wanted to bring up a subject, that 50-foot corridor overlay zone. I believe the intent of that buffer was to preserve natural vegetation within the buffer, and then in lieu of natural preservation, if you didn't have the trees, you'd actually have to plant it to a dense. In situations where this is, when I'm looking for the best solution to provide the most stormwater possible, there should be possibilities on 44 where you have 50 foot along the whole frontage that could still be heavily vegetated like we show, but you can make up a foot and a half of stormwater. We all know stormwater. That could be a very big improvement to parcels like this, where you go out there, it's not heavily vegetated anymore. You could plant it, create a stormwater feature in it, not water, it could still be dry, But that could improve the stormwater for the community around and make a project like this even cheaper to build, or we could give a little bit more stormwater. But I don't know what the mechanism would be allow that, but that was just something that I just thought of right there. I know stormwater is a big issue nowadays, and we want to provide the best stormwater solution we can. So if you have any questions, we love brainstorming. We come up with options. We haven't fully designed this. This is at the zoning level. We've done enough analysis to know the stormwater will work, but once that goes to final site plan, we'll have more information on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess one question, and this may relate to code and legal here, but couldn't we, and why do we have to always have the impervious parking? You know, there are many types of parking solutions now that don't involve just paving it, ones that allow the water to percolate through. I tried to fight this battle when they put the parking lot here in this building right here, and it went nowhere, you know, but I think we need to start demonstrating there's other ways besides just paving over everything and still provide adequate parking. There are alternatives out there.
And that's definitely a solution in a bunch of areas, and that's usually when they're trying to, you know, minimize the impervious area. In a site like this, what you tend to deal with is we have a dry retention area in the south part of the site. Most of the parking is going to be an exfiltration trench. So the inlets take the water directly underneath the soil. If it was impervious, like semi-impervious surface, it just goes right into the exfiltration trench. So the time of concentration, I mean, it goes into the inlet, goes right into the exfiltration trench. So on this site, if you made it, you know, semi-impervious concrete or whatnot, you're kind of giving up the benefit of how the longevity of the actual asphalt in this situation. It's something we could think about around trees and so forth, but for this site, since it's all going to be exfiltration trench underneath the parking lot, it really doesn't benefit it necessarily on this site. But I do agree with you. There's a lot of opportunities for that when you typically don't have stormwater and it's just percolating right directly into the ground. But St. John's city statutes and rules, we're required, even if we do an impervious surface or a semi-impervious surface, we still have to do stormwater. So we're already putting stormwater underneath the ground on this site.
Any other questions?
Do you know the size of the exfiltration systems underneath the parking lot?
It will most likely, usually we design them where the width of the drive aisle, and it's a linear exfiltration trench. So I don't have all the information on the seasonal highs and so forth. Those are governed by geotech. But essentially, this site will be built up. It'll be underneath the ground. Sometimes those cross sections are a foot deep. Sometimes they're a foot and a half. They have all different materials for exfiltration trench. They have chambers. They have these melt crates. They have all rock and so forth. So at this time, I think it would probably be somewhere on this area. You're around like, they might be a foot and a half deep. They're very shallow.
Is that part of your calculations that for the retention pond, you got to retain X amount for the property? Is this calculations been used into the exfiltration system, or is that a bonus? Is that did you go overboard with it?
Yes, they'd kind of be designed as one. So an exfiltration trench is essentially the dry retention you see in the back. It just stores all the water in the voids. So in this essence, we have 100% storage in the dry retention, and then we're making up all the difference we need in exfiltration. And then I brought up that if we could do another dry swale, you get 100% capacity when it's open. We visually see it. It used to be dry retention, even on St. John's. The city doesn't require it, but they require a factor of safety of 2 on an exfiltration trench. So the exfiltration trench is literally designed to hold twice the capacity. Now St. John's has actually applied a factor of safety of 2 to just dry retention areas. So just that rule alone doubles your capacity that you need. So it will be designed now with a factor of safety of 2, the whole entire stormwater system, which is, after you get these long rainstorm events, it's designed for 12 inches. Well, we got much more than 12 inches, so that factor of safety does help.
And where's the pop off? Where's it go? From the retention, you're going
The
to
drainage-
overflow, and then where's it go?
Yeah, there's a natural canal on the south that we're preserving. So most likely there will be an outfall structure that, after you attenuate on site, it will discharge to that south swell.
Does that, have you looked at that particular? Does it need excavated? Does it need lowered? Does it need to be worked on to help get this away from the residents' properties?
So when we do our final certification to our outfall, we're supposed to certify where the outfall goes. So we would inspect the pipes that go underneath the road to make sure that those aren't clogged. Hopefully they're not clogged after all these storms we've had, but they are. We would recommend cleaning them. And then we'd also see where that is. Our hands are kind of tied to go in there and dig out a canal that's in a wetland, but there are ways that you can go about that. So if we could benefit the situation, we definitely will as we get into full design.
Any other questions?
Did I hear you say that you are doing your stormwater design to the most current enhanced NSB stormwater requirements?
Yep, we're required to, yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't see that in the proposed memorandum. Can that be put in?
Yeah, and that's something we're happy to stipulate too, that it's the current code as adopted standards. That's not a problem, and it probably wasn't articulated to the extent it could have been, but that's not a problem. And again, it's brainstorming these solutions because we're trying to be sensitive to these folks too, and if a recommendation moves forward, trying to address those stormwater concerns that push water in a different direction. Again, I can't argue the engineering and how to accomplish that, but again, I'm trying to figure out and brainstorm solutions moving forward that make sense, that are possible. Like Matt had mentioned, the dry retention combination with the vegetation, that makes sense from my perspective. I'm not sure what legal gymnastics we have to do to get there, but that's something that's on the table too, as maybe a recommendation or a possibility that we can look into.
Any other questions?
I've got a couple. First of all, I'd like to commend you and your client for putting in what I consider a realistic schedule. It looks like maybe 6 years at the most. But with that, I do have a question around, help me understand what is substantial completion when we only have a two-story building and a parking lot.
I may want to defer to your city attorney so I don't speak out of
I wasn't sure which one to ask.
I know how it's applied in many jurisdictions, but I'd probably be more appropriate if you wanted to opine.
Yeah, that would still go through the normal process in terms of building inspections, et cetera. So all of that will still be followed.
Yeah, I'm actually, the question is honestly geared towards what if they start dragging it out? Or they come back, look at Ocean's Gate, for an example. They come back and present the argument, well, we've substantially completed the project, but yet it's not ready for business, it's not open.
Right, I think what maybe I can give you the assurance of is Ocean Gate's a multi-phase development, so I can understand a little bit of maybe where they're coming from. This is a single-phase development, and substantial completion in my mind is that you're actually acting on the permits that were pulled and doing construction. That's on a single-phase development, that's everything. That isn't, you can do this piece and then come back and do that piece. So that's the commitment we're trying to make today. So again, happy to tailor language in that way if there is a little bit of an ambiguity, but I think that's the intent on our end too. That we want to get started as soon as possible too. We don't want this to drag on.
And I'm not sure probably the question is for you, Grant. Under the item 5, permitted uses, they list 4 uses. And I see this as a contract between the client and the city. So they're locking themselves into those 4 uses without coming back and either opening up the PUD, MDA. Because there's a laundry list, as you mentioned before, the other PUD had the laundry list in it. And I appreciate you focusing on what your really intended purpose is a medical suite.
Exactly.
Is my understanding correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the only other question I have around that is, could you provide an example of what an outpatient care might look like?
Sure. Well, I can actually get the doctor if that's better for him to answer.
If you'd like to.
Yeah, that
Figure it's the applicant's time.
Yeah.
Hello. Ellis Fort, owner MDPA Solutions. It's New Smyrna Wellness. We're right across from the hospital now. We're primary care based. We've got 4 MDs, 3 PAs, 2 nurse practitioners, physical therapists. We have a complete kind of wellness package. We try to keep everybody in-house. People have tended to like that we offer most services they would need. We're not Advent, we're not this big corporate conglomerate. We try to even, we've got a physical therapist here. We try to see one person at a time, keep our wait times down. I don't want to say no to people when they call for primary care. It's a big problem in the area, trying to get in somewhere. I want people to get seen quick. I want to keep the ERs open for real stuff and not like colds. We should be able to take care of it on our end, and it's an issue. It's been a problem for a while. We've never turned down patients yet, but we're out of space. We're trying to grow. Parking is a huge issue where we're located now. Advent struggles to get parking for employees and for patients, and we tried to find a solution.
Thank you. Any
Thank you.
additional questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Anything further from the applicant?
Further questions? I'll wait to hear.
Any other questions for the applicant in general? Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and move it over to public participation. A 3-minute limitation will be imposed unless otherwise granted by the board. The time is now yours if you'd like to speak. Again, it's 3 minutes, and with the amount of people that are here tonight, you're more than welcome to fill your 3 minutes. If somebody touches on a topic you've already heard, just try to avoid that if you can, just for the sake of time. But hey, the 3 minutes is yours. It's your freedom. So if anybody would like to come forward, time is now yours.
Hi, my name is Jeff Dodge, 1638 James Street, New Smyrna. My father owns 379 Wild Orange Drive at the end. So I own lots on the other side of the street as well. So I was involved in the previous MDA, and I know that's not directly applicable. One of the major concerns that I see is the access to Wild Orange. I want to point out a few things. Wild Orange is a county road. It is an 18-foot prescriptive right-of-way. It is not a 50-foot right-of-way. That was never certified. So what the county has for access is an 18-foot right-of-way, and I think most of the residents on Wild Orange would oppose expansion of that as much as we could. So the fact that they have a driveway access 400 feet back on Wild Orange, again, I haven't seen their detailed plans, but that's my estimate. I would strongly prefer that not exist, or that access be via 44. They have an access there. And again, I'm from the parking side. They could put parking places there rather than have that driveway and have commercial traffic on our residential road. I think those are the main points that I wanted to put out in my opposition to the plan as it exists.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Mark Ledford. I live on Wild Orange Drive as well.
Could you just state your address?
309 South Wild Orange Drive.
Thank you.
Again, my concern, of course, is the flooding and the water that we've seen, especially lately. I've lived there 30 years, and we've always had issues there with the storm water. And with that site being 0% pervious area now, it has trouble, right? It has nothing on it now, and we're having a lot of trouble with the street. I like what Jeff was saying about the entrance on Wild Orange as well. But the main thing is the parking lot that, like you had brought up, it could be pervious. You can make that pervious so it is a stormwater system, which is going to greatly affect or reduce, the impact on it. I'd like to see the site also with other, not just meeting the minimum requirements of the stormwater, but going above and beyond, because you can make it so that it drains down to the aquifer a lot quicker and contains its own runoff water on that site. And that's what's needed there on that street, because we already have a lot of problems. We have septic tanks on the street that are affected greatly long after the storms that they struggle with. And I would say that's my main point. It should be a low-impact development, and there are ways to do that that are done all the time today, and that's what I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy Snezak, 512 Yukon. I'm familiar with the doctor's practice. It's a wonderful, holistic practice, and familiar with a couple of his practitioners as well. So there's no question he's an honorable gentleman. There are some things, though, that are missing in the agreement, and they're probably not going to get brought up by other people because I'm a contract nerd. But we need to remember there is no MDA in place, and it does not matter what the MDA that was agreed to 15 years ago said. So there's no loss suffered here that can be stated as a fact. It expired. So you're starting with a blank sheet of paper. So a couple of things that are missing from the MDA, and I think it's appropriate that they be in there. Some stipulation of what the hours of operation are, given that it's a practice. I would expect some operating hours be mentioned there. This is not the kind of facility today that's opened at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, nor should it be when it's surrounded by residences. So please consider that. Lighting on the back of the building would be very important. 35 feet is a 3-story house in New Smyrna, according to the regulations. So it's very important that there be some, I won't say the word restriction, but some sort of boundaries on what that lighting should look like. The sign on the property, they provided a graphic of a lovely sign, but in the agreement itself, it allows a much larger sign. So I would think that if this is what the sign is going to be size-wise, that's what the agreement should say, and not something that's much, much larger. There's no mention in here about Florida vernacular, articulation on the facade, colorization, that kind of thing. I think the doctor would consider that, but perhaps no one's just asked him to do that. The parking stalls, that's interesting, 80. 80 is what is generally called for 20,000 square feet. However, you've already made an accommodation by what's being asked in the size of the stalls. So and that was done so that they could keep it at 80. So getting rid of those 4 spaces, you already reduced each stall by a foot. And the other thing is, if someone could clarify in 11, they have 24 months to get a permit, 5 years to do development, but 5 years from what date? 5 years from the signing of this agreement, or 5 years from getting a permit, plus a 1-year extension. So I just want to make sure we're talking about a maximum of 6 years, not 8, so that you don't have to look at another one of these from scratch again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Kyle. I'm at 620 Hidden Pines Boulevard. And my concerns are the historic trees and the flooding. It sounds like that they were unable to design the building in a way that they could maintain those 3 historic trees that they originally requested permission to get rid of. So it sounds like they're still going to be requesting permission to destroy those trees. I'm here to say that you don't have to give them that permission. It's not a requirement of the PUD that you give them that permission. And I'll say what I said before is that they knew that those trees were there when they purchased the property. So maybe they don't have as much buildable space on that property as they are requesting. The other thing is that stream that where the storm water is going to flow to, we know where that goes. That goes to the Mosquito Control Canal that flows between Wildwood and Hidden Pines Boulevard. I've watched the rescue trucks come down Hidden Pines Boulevard. Sorry, I get really nervous when I public speak. I really hate it, so you know this is meaningful to me because I'm up here. But I've seen the rescue trucks come on Hidden Pines Boulevard to rescue my neighbors from their flooded houses. And I've also seen this property flooded, not just during hurricanes, but also during heavy rain events. So I know that there's a lot of water that sits there, and I know that since it's going to go in that stream on the back part of their property, I know exactly where it's going to go. It's going to go into our neighborhoods and some of my neighbors' houses. So I also know that the city and the county have been working toward finding funding to buy people out. You know where that funding comes from? It comes from our tax dollars. Yeah, maybe that's FEMA, but that's my federal tax dollars. You know, maybe it's some other funding source. It could be, they're going to be asking for a new county tax to fund stormwater solutions. That's going to be my tax dollars. So why would you allow more building on a frequently flooded piece of property that is either going to be flooded itself or increase the likelihood of flooding in the surrounding neighborhoods, where then I'm going to have to bail these people out later with my tax dollars, or I'm going to be bailing myself out with my own money for my house that's destroyed, or I'm going to have to pay more in insurance cost because of increased likelihood of flooding. So, if you're concerned about wellness, maybe be concerned about the wellness in other ways too. There's other pieces of land
Thank you, ma'am,
around.
for your time.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name's Jeff Robbins. I live at 469 Hidden Pines. I also have a property that has a flag lot that my parents live in at 501 Hidden Pines Boulevard. So this piece of property up there that you're talking about, if you go all the way up to Sugar Mill and go down 44, all that water tracks. There's been a bunch of building on there. I'm not one of these conspiracy theorists that go, hey, we put all these dealerships in there, we put Home Depot, that's creating all the flooding down there. I mean, we're getting a lot of runoff water. So I know the engineer spoke of the runoff from that property. Some of it, not all of it's going to be retained. It'll go to 44. It'll go in that ditch. It runs down, and the canal that they're speaking of between Wildwood and Hidden Pines flows reverse because there's so much water comes down there. And from Milton and from Ian, if you drove 44 at all to look at anything, you saw how it was pooled up down at Hidden Pines. That water flows the opposite way from where it's supposed to drain. It's supposed to go north. It flows south back to Corbin Park area back there, and then it turns, and then once it gets enough momentum, it will flow south, but that's like 2 to 3 days afterwards. Ian, 20 inches of water in my garage, 8 in my house, 11 months, 3 weeks to rebuild it, okay? Milton, 12 inches of water in my garage. So for me to want to put another piece of property that creates more flow, I think what we need to do is get our infrastructure under control to get all that water to move from all the business that's already there. And I don't care personally if we build businesses all the way from 95 all the way. I don't want to stop the growth, but we need to control the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Steve Gunter, 140 Temple Street. This master development agreement, it did expire 15 years ago. And since then, I think you'll see that we've had a lot of changes. We've reshaped the entire area on Highway 44. It's been overwhelmed probably for a decade. We keep developing anyway. We come up with some reason to pass it, property ownership laws or whatever. But my biggest concern is, where are you going to discharge any of the water? If the conveyance route that's by the welcoming center, that's already beyond capacity, that ends up in Corbin Park, I grew up in Oliver Estates, and as you know, Oliver Estates is overwhelmed. Everything east of Glencoe, it goes from about an 18, 19-foot elevation down to 5 feet, just a mile and a half down the road. All of that water, I can show you videos. It will travel south. It will then turn west, hit a northern tributary until it hits a road such as Jungle. It will back up, travel south, back west until it can't go uphill anymore, back north, and then it gets back into a Turnbull tributary and eventually starts heading north again because everything's got to go out Ponce Inlet. I'm not against development at all. I grew up in the building trade, but we have to be responsible. I've had, as this gentleman, I had 2 feet of water in my bedroom. Milton, it was right back in our back room. And I don't see where you could ever allow anybody to develop until you come up with a new conveyance route. If you can show us a new one. 44 has been dug out, south side, north side. I've videoed and taken pictures. The Turnbull Canal is backflowing. The FDOT pond is backflowing. I have video, I have pictures. So what you're doing is having these people that have money and come in, they haul fill dirt in, change the topography, and then basically keep whatever they're supposed to keep legally or to code, but everything else gets deflected and it comes down to our older neighborhoods. So I just say, please find a new conveyance route. You can't use the ones we already have. They're all overwhelmed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dwayne McDuffie. Presently, I'm building a new single-family residence on Wild Orange at 360.
You stated your address?
360 South Wild Orange.
All right, good. That's okay.
I wanted to start off saying I really love the concept that they're trying to do here. I'm going to be one of those people that's going to drive down and see it every day. But that's not my concern. I'm glad that it's not a fast food restaurant. I'm not, I'm happy that it's not a check cashing store or something like that. I'm glad it's a medical plaza. I'd much rather have that. But just as the engineer stated before, they have, sized their water retention to accommodate minimal for St. John's and for New Smyrna. But they have a pop-off that's still leading into that canal. Why is that? Because they need it. I would love to see 100% retainage on that property. Because if they have a pop-off valve that's leading into that canal, that means that they are going to have runoff created from them building that going into our community. I'm for building that. But I would love to see some way that they can accommodate 100% water retention on the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Al Parada. I live at 303 Wildwood Drive. My concern is what everybody else has said here, pretty much is the water runoff. If you look at your site plan here, my property is where the retention pond is supposed to be. I am just on the other side of that. And I have video. I've sent an email to the City of New Smyrna Beach clerk, and it has video, and I have direct video of actually the property that they want to build on as the water overflows and comes back into our yards. Is there any way I can bring that up on here? Is that a possibility? Because a picture tells 1,000 words.
Not at this time.
All right. Well, anyway, it does show that the water does overflow from that retention area. It comes over into the canal, into that short canal area, and then it starts filling up on the properties. Just by the grace of God, when I built my home in '88, I added extra fill dirt, so I am 2 feet higher than most of the people around me, and that's the only thing that saved me from flooding. But the water rushes around from the street, goes south on Wildwood, goes around our houses, goes back to Wildwood, and the whole area fills up. So it's definitely a problem with the flooding. Again, myself, I'm not against of any construction or anything like that. All good. Just something has to be done with the water problems for the fact that all my neighbors are flooding, just several of us, by the grace of God, that we didn't flood because of the fast-moving water, because we live closer under the street. But that's all going to change with this new development, building, parking lot. It's just going to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Megan Eves, owner of Pools by Bradley. My husband's Bradley. He's not here tonight. He's out of town. I just wanted to get clarification because I'm going to come across like I'm not a believer in rehab, but I did want to get clarification on exactly what the facility will do. I look at the website and it's pain management, opioid dependence treatment, substance abuse recovery, medical marijuana, interventional pain treatment. We will be sandwiched between that and ABC. I was late tonight because I got a call from a lovely lady who wanted my video footage of my parking lot at Pools by Bradley because there was an arrest made in our parking lot Friday. We have numerous issues. So the flooding has been covered. We flood. The little house we own behind Pools by Bradley has been completely gutted and redone and has flooded many times. So I guess I go from a different direction of just wanting the community to feel safe and the homeowners and the families as well as the businesses along there to feel safe. And I'm not so sure with the wellness as I see it on the website, and I could be very wrong. And if I am, I'm sorry. So I just want clarification on that for my standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Connie McKenzie. I live at 293 Wildwood Drive, right next door to Mr. Parada that just spoke a few minutes ago. The drainage ditch that they had talked about and that I believe is in the proposal that is supposed to be maintained by the developer, that, as other people have said, cannot handle this water. Our property backs right up to the two southern parcels of this proposal. The drainage ditch goes through our lot into the back, and so right behind us would be the retention pond. And that's got to be maximum. I mean, if it's, whatever they can do if this is gonna go through. And I won't go any more on this flooding because everybody's talking about it, but thank God we didn't flood, but the water came right up to the house. My concern also is with the safety of 44 and driving. It looks to me from the plan that they would have to expand the turn lane that would go into Wild Orange. Because now there's a short one there, but where the driveway looks like, that you would have to make a whole new, or extend that. So therefore, that cuts down on drainage on the road. I don't know how the engineers take care of that. The other part is when people are coming from the west and they were going to blend into that, you have to be very careful coming off Wildwood if they're going to go over and not go ahead. If they have their signal light on, you think they're going to turn on Wildwood, and maybe they're not. They're going to go to the medical center. The other part of the travel part is when it's very difficult, first of all, to get out of our street on Wildwood if you want to go west. So then you're waiting for all the traffic to come down from the west. You have to go across the lanes, make your U-turn in front of the Ford dealer. The entrance to Wild Orange, if you're coming from town, and there's cars there, and if I'm coming from my house and I want to go west, and I'm trying to get across into that part of the road, if there's cars coming in and they're wanting to turn into Wild Orange, then that's blocking my vision and creating some safety problems there about, do I know if cars are coming, if I can pull out or not? That's another thing I don't think has been brought up, and I know that has nothing to do with this planning and zoning, but it's something that needs to be considered. The other thing, it wouldn't affect us, but there's these other 3 properties that are on Wildwood that back up, and I think somebody addressed that a little bit.
If you don't mind wrapping up, you are out of time.
I'm sorry.
You're fine, I'm just letting you know.
Just the amount of setback, because of, those 2 houses, you're going to see that building is going to be right there. So, I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're fine. Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward?
I wasn't planning on coming up, but there are a couple things. My name is Debbie Banks. I live at 298 Wildwood Drive. And one thing that I want to talk about is...
Do you mind speaking a little bit closer directly into the mic?
Okay.
Thank you.
Reiterate is we need to take care of our existing infrastructure before we continue to build in this area. I know other places have already been authorized to, like Deering Park, that type of thing. But talking about this canal that's supposed to take the overflow, they're talking about the retention pond and all that. We have had several hurricanes where the trees have come down in that canal, which is just north of our property. I have called mosquito control, St. John's, the county, the city. They all passed the buck about cleaning out the trees, the sand that's built up. We're not even taking care of what's happening in the past 10 years. And we want to continue to make problems worse, and that's what's happening. But they all passed the buck. Nobody's come out and cleaned out the trees that have fallen in that canal. The sand was 3 feet high from Ian, and it's still there. Those culverts that go under Wildwood to Wild Orange, who knows how much sand is in there, because our ditches had 3 feet. They had to come out and dig it out with graders and stuff. So that's my concern, is we're not taking care of our existing problems, but we're continuing to add to them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Please hold your applause. Thank you.
Bonnie Davenport, and I live at 117 Fran Drive in Ellison Acres, which is about half a mile from where this proposed medical center is to be built. I just wanted to say that I'm not opposed to the development of a medical complex, but to remind the board that with growth and with an agreement to a new development in an already known flood risk area comes accountability to our existing residential neighborhoods for sustainable infrastructure and a responsibility to ensure the safety of all the citizens living in the surrounding areas. We had major flooding in our whole neighborhood, and we even had 1 death due to drowning in his home, due to the fact that the flooding was so deep and there was no high water vehicle that could get down there to him. And so the flooding is a major problem and is a real concern, which is why I come to all these meetings, just to make sure that something is going to be done for these older neighborhoods where I've lived since I was 10 years old. And, we need to be heard. We may be in an unincorporated area, but we are part of New Smyrna Beach. And we just need to know that all the new development that is surrounding us, that we're not forgotten, that our drainage problems are your drainage problems too, because you all, with all your building, is what's causing our homes to flood. And we're out of money. We've spent all of our savings to repair, and it's not our fault. It's nothing that we have done. So we just need to be heard and understood that, and somebody to come out there and tell us, yes, we are going to do something for you all in your neighborhood, which I have not heard since Ian. No one has come to our neighborhood and said, we can do this and we can do this to prevent your street from flooding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pat Scott, 112 Eddy Road. I'm also in Ellison Acres. And I live right up by 44, where that pond is across the street in Harley-Davidson. Now, if you want to make an example, you can look at what's happened to Ellison Acres from all the building all around it. And maybe you can figure out how you can do better in other places. Because right now, nobody's helping us. We flood all the time. I sit in my house and watch the water across the street just keep getting higher and higher in that pond. There are pipes going out of it. Why it's there and it doesn't go anywhere else, even when we are in a drought, there's a problem. We need to be fixing this stuff first. It's good to build. You know, progress is okay, but progress is not okay when you don't fix what you got to fix first, because what it does, it just makes it worse. So you really guys need to work on this, and I personally don't agree with them going down Wild Orange off that road to go in that way. But then if they go up a 44, it's going to go down our way too. So, you know, you guys have got to figure out what you're doing with this stuff.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Liz McDuffie, and I own 360 Wild Orange. One thing I do want to speak back about is flooding is a concern of mine as well. However, I am a bit alarmed at looking at the plan and seeing that the front of the building faces Wild Orange. Wild Orange, as you know, is a beautiful, quiet street. It speaks a ton of the character of New Smyrna in a very busy area. I'm a little confused, and I would like clarification on how thin the parking lot is. Is traffic coming in from 44, and is it being directed out Wildwood, or is it a two-way parking lot? I want to know, like, is traffic going to be directed out at Wildwood? As a mom, I have 4 children who are entering the age of driving, and I'm very concerned about the turnoff to 44 and any traffic that will be coming in and impeding that area. Again, I was surprised to see the front face Wild Orange, where 44 is more a commercial district. So my concern would be more along the lines of taking that frontage. And I know from what I hear, it's to preserve the trees, but there's a lot of character, and Wild Orange is such a beautifully preserved street that I would hate to see the front of it go to Wild Orange and not 44. So just concerned with traffic and the character. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Denise Trumbo, and I live at 655 Wildwood Drive, and I hate to speak publicly, but this really bothers me. A lot of things bother me about this, but one of the most important thing is the flooding. And I would like to ask the question, do you all have a comprehensive stormwater drainage system or plan? Because I have not seen any results of having one. Nothing has been done in my neighborhood and the surrounding area. So I'd like to ask you, is there a plan? All the ditches that run west to east that cross Wildwood Drive, there are 3 of them that you can see. They're not maintained at all. I have requested maintenance on the one that runs by my house, and it is not maintained. And I wanted to ask, do you all know that there is a ditch that runs on the north side of Page Avenue that's probably 10 feet deep that fills up, and it does not have a retention pond to run into or a lake to run into. You know where it runs? To the end of Wildwood Drive on my street. That's where this deep canal dumps its water on Wildwood Drive. And then because the south end of Wildwood Drive is higher than the middle section, that water runs to the north side of Wildwood Drive. So it would be nice if you all could come out and see a canal that's hidden, because I so appreciate that this city bought that property. But on the north side of that Page Avenue is a very deep canal, and it dumps all the water on our street. And another thing, and maybe you all know this, that the overflow from Lake Waterford runs into that big canal that, well, it's not that big, but that goes under 44. Did you know that the overflow from Lake Waterford flows into that canal? And now Lake Waterford area is flooded because they overbuilt behind it. So that canal that runs on the east side of this proposed development is filled with the overflow from Lake Waterford, from this deep water canal from Page, from all of this area. It's all flowing into that canal on the east side of this property. And what I was told several years back is the pipe that goes under 44, when it was built, it's too small to handle the water. And if you go on the other side of 44, you will see that that canal is very small. So all that water that's going on the east side, it flows, well, some of it flows under 44. A lot of it flows on my street, flows on Wild Orange. And you know, Hidden Pines, the condos were saying...
You are out of time. We
Okay,
do appreciate
but
your
you know
comments. I was
what's
trying to
gonna-
let you wrap it up.
Okay, well, what's going to flood next are the condos in Hidden Pines. The houses on Hidden Pines Boulevard flood. The houses on Wildwood flood.
Okay.
But then the next thing that's going to flood are going to be the condos that are hidden in Hidden Pines.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Do you all have a plan? Is there a storm water drainage plan?
I've written that question down. We'll ask it
Okay.
later on. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, public participation is closed. City staff, do you have any further comments based upon the public participation? I'll give them a second. Hey, Jeff. You're fine.
Pardon me?
So the question for you is, do you have any further comments or anything to add based upon public participation?
Nothing I can think of. Shane was talking to me about the stormwater master plan that is underway. The city's taken it on and will be involving the county. A lot of the adjacent properties that are south of this are in the county, and in terms of maintenance responsibility, it is also often difficult to know if it's mosquito control or Volusia County, but they're primarily within county jurisdiction. So,
If you don't mind me just confirming with you on that stormwater master plan, the master plan itself covers not only the properties that are in New Smyrna Beach, but those that are unincorporated within that interlocal service boundary agreement. So a lot of the folks here that are in the county but are in New Smyrna, that will incorporate their properties, correct?
right.
Okay. So seeing as that's the case, I just wanted to point out to the unincorporated residents that do not pay property taxes to the city of New Smyrna Beach, the city of New Smyrna Beach is doing a study on behalf of you, trying to determine the stormwater issues within your areas. So it's underway. It is something that I believe the next part was going to come out later this year. I think the final report is next year. I know it probably sounds like crazy that it takes some time, but it does take time to go through all of the data points that these engineers have to look at. They're not looking at one property. They're looking at how the stormwater flows throughout an entire city. So this has to be done comprehensively and try to figure out, okay, what regulations, what ordinances need to come from that plan to improve our situation. So they are working on it. So I want to point that out, and I just wanted to kind of confirm that with you being staff.
Right.
So, is there any other further questions of staff this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Just to clarify the traffic flow, if there were questions remaining of that, the connection onto 44 it goes both ways. It's a right in, right out, and it'll be the same situation for the one on Wild Orange. People could conceivably turn right out of there to go down Wild Orange, but we're anticipating 95% of it is going to go north to the intersection with 44, where they have to take a right turn there anyway and can't cross the median.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and bring up the applicant again. I'd imagine you've been taking notes as I have, so if you'd like to address different points from the public participation portion.
Of course. Joey Posey again, 420 South Nova, attorney for the applicant. I was taking notes as we went, and there was a lot of comments, I think, focused on kind of a zero-sum game. And, I just want to be clear at the outset that this property has entitlements, and, I think that's clear in the staff report. I think it's clear just in the nature of the PUD zoning, and I do feel for the folks out there, and we want to do our part to help them. But to say that it's an all or nothing game is a little disingenuous. And that's the reason we're here. That's the reason we're engaging with neighbors. That's the reason we've taken 2 years to get to here. We want to do the right thing, but we don't want to start from a position that's just isn't tenable. That everybody has a property right. Everybody has a right to develop their property within the rights that are granted to them, and that's what we're here asking for. We're not here asking for variances. We're not here asking for a change in the zoning. We're asking for something consistent with the zoning. So the comments that I heard from the neighbors, our plans show, the first comment I heard was around the right-of-way in the county. It shows as a 50-foot right-of-way, and of course, we'll follow county permitting if it requires expansion of the right-of-way width, the road base. Those are all permitting requirements we're not asking for waivers on, so we have no problem with that. The impervious versus impervious discussion about the parking lot, we really don't have a dog in the fight, except to the extent that I think that it could be a little difficult for folks that may have medical conditions to go in and out of a parking stall that isn't a stabilized surface, that isn't always stabilized. That's my only concern thinking offhand, but again, I understand recommendations and trying to accomplish, I think what's best for the citizens. And you heard from the engineer that I think from a design perspective, it doesn't really affect it one way or the other based on how we're doing the underground retention. So, but that's something to consider. I didn't think about this, but it is an 8 to 5 facility Monday through Friday. I'm happy to stipulate to that. That can be in the PD, not a problem.
Okay.
The security lighting, the lighting situation, of course there's going to be a photometric plan, but we really don't have any interest in lighting the rear, except to the extent maybe some ground lighting for security. But we're happy to stipulate to that too, and just make it security lighting in the parking lot in the front of the building. That's not a problem too. So we're not trying to impact the neighbors. So another condition that we're happy to stipulate too. I reread the agreement, and it's 5 years from commission approval. So, regardless of the nature of the other aspects of the agreement, it's a approval through 5 year. So, that just wanted to clarify that. The other thing I wanted to point out on the previous plan is that if you look closely at the previously adopted plan, there's actually one historic tree that's being impacted and one historic tree that actually is the strip line's being impacted. So it's hasn't been called out, or it isn't apparent when you look at the plan, but the way our engineer has laid it out and trying to be as sensitive to the historics that are on site as possible, the previous plan would have immediately impacted two historic trees the way it was laid out to begin with. thought that was, something to consider, since it was almost sounding as if the original plan was somehow addressing this in some way, and it didn't. The other thing I want to point out is that we're not shying away from the heightened requirements on stormwater. Again, that was the whole reason the city went through a process at the get-go that was recent.